Well, the day has come. It feels just right. It feels good for Craig Counsell. It might be a while before we get used to that, but it was a different kind of sight down at Wrigley Field today. One of ours had jumped to the other side. We'll talk about that. Craig Counsell, the next manager of the Chicago Cubs. I still can't believe this. A week later. We'll talk about that. And what's next for the Milwaukee Brewers? All that ahead on this edition of Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It always feels a little different when you see that introductory press conference when one of our guys is wearing a jersey for another team. Prince Fielder. Mike Holmgren, when he was introduced in Seattle, we haven't even really talked about that as being one of, when he, after leaving here and winning a Super Bowl just a couple of years before. Paul Molitor donning a Blue Jay jersey. Brett Favre in the Viking jersey. Yeah, some of that. And today, it did not feel good. It felt to me like it's just, we can't have nice things sometimes. And I know I felt that way before about being a Brewers fan, but we'll get into that. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here on Locked On Brewers. Google, Spotify, Apple, we're on all the major downloads. And I appreciate everybody for following us along. Follow me on Twitter, Chuck Freeman, FREIMUND. And by all means, please follow us on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Brewers. You'll get our episodes. We're going to be busy here in the offseason, keeping track. Hey, the season doesn't end with Craig Counsell becoming manager of the Cubs. Let's not forget that. Okay? Let's not be closing up AmFam Field here. The defending champs in the NL Central. Sure, the season didn't end like we wanted to, but my gosh, we got to pick ourselves up and move forward. But by all means, please subscribe to us on YouTube. Chuck Freeman on YouTube. Locked On Brewers on YouTube. Just hit the subscribe button and the little bell. It'll alert you every time we drop an episode. So he comes in, walks in to the press conference this morning at 10 o'clock. All the Milwaukee media is down there. I did not want to waste my time going down there. I watched it on TV, okay, start to finish. And all those Chicago writers and broadcasters, they're all in glee. You're all in happy. You're all on cloud nine because you think you stole one from us. But the bottom line is we always get you in the end. You always think you always got one up. And some of you guys down in Chicago media, a lot of you guys, I don't even want to go there. That's not the time for this. But the bottom line, he walks in, they give him the jersey, he puts it on. Oh, it feels so good. Feels good. Oh, I mean, it's just like right here. Again, it feels like we can't have nice feelings. I feel like when we get nice things, it's eventually, well, that's like Giannis. People want to take Giannis and Rodgers and everybody away from us all the time. But it feels good. That did not feel good to hear him say that feels good. And like I said, we'll move forward. I just don't want to hear it. I just don't want to hear him say, oh, it feels good. I mean, I just don't think Craig gets it. Yeah, I don't. And he said many times today, I think, I underestimated. He looked at this as kind of, growth and a challenge and all that. Yeah, for you, of course. And I can't blame you for you. But when you say things like, feels good when you're putting on a Cubs jersey, how do you think the rest of us feel? All right? We're going to get a good manager and we're going to be competitive. We're going to move forward from this. My God, I didn't want. I mean, he says that right away. I'm like, geez, I don't get it. I mean, Craig is a smart guy. He's a smart guy. I don't know how he doesn't understand this. I don't. He says many times today, I underestimated, maybe what fans were going to think. Do you think going to Chicago, fans were going to say, oh, that's okay. You're going to our rivals who we hate. We don't like those fans coming into our ballpark. We can't stand them coming into our ballpark. Okay, that's one of many things. But we don't like them coming down to Wisconsin. I don't like Illinois people going up the Door County. I don't like it when they cross our borders. I don't like when they use the Wisconsin Dells, Elkhart Lake, or anywhere I go. I don't like seeing them at AmFam Field. I don't stay in Illinois. That's how I feel. Okay? Now, if you're in Illinois, you're living in Illinois and you're a Brewer fan, you come over here, that's different. That's different. But I don't, how do you not get that? I just feel like, how do you not understand? And he also said time eases things. Time's not going to ease things for a while on this. Yeah, it did with Brett Favre, it will with Aaron Rodgers. But somebody mentioned, have you thought about when the first time the Brewers play the Cubs? I believe it's in May. And he said, well, time eases. Between now and then, when he walks out of the dugout, the visitor's dugout, the fans are going to let him have it. The fans are going to say, oh, yeah, time moved on. Time moved on. Now, especially if his team's in first place. Now, if they're in last place, that might be a different story. But I'm telling you, I think Counsell going to the Cubs just ramps things up as far as the battle between these two teams. It just ramps things up a little bit more. That one of our guys, our hometown guy, went across there. Okay. Again, professionally, he can do whatever he wants. But yeah, that ramps things up. And if you don't understand that, I don't know. I don't know what world you're living in, Craig Counsell, in Whitewater or in Whitefish Bay or Whitewater, wherever. I don't know what world you're living in, but hey, talked about the 9 years of good experience. Like we gave fans 9 years of good experience. Yeah, you did. Because you had nowhere to go up with this franchise because, the franchise, quite frankly, has been pathetic as far as championship value is concerned. Yeah, we did have a good experience the last 9 years. It's better than losing. Yeah, did it kick us in the groin at the end of the day by many, many postseason disappointments? That's fine. No, it's not fine, but it's like at least it's getting to the postseason, which we weren't even doing before. Yeah, 2011, 2008, and then 20 some odd years before that. So yeah, to be a consistent winner, yeah, gave us a good experience, enjoyed going to games, had fun. Now this past season, most of it was not very fun watching your team play. It wasn't. And maybe that was not your fault. That roster makeup was just absolutely, it was incredibly bad. Okay, you relied so much on pitching. You could have lost 90 games. If the pitching had not carried you would have lost 90 games with how bad the offense was. I don't think anybody is not fooling anybody by saying that statement. Yeah, Craig Counsell could have still been the manager of the Milwaukee Brewers today if they didn't have such a good season last year. Maybe not. I don't know. But he said he wanted a new challenge. Been thinking about it for 2 years. We'll get to that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Your boy Chuck Freeman here, fired up today on a Monday. Waited till the Counsell press conference was done, absorbed it a little bit, and here we are. We'll talk more about that. He said he's been thinking about this for 2 years. 2 years, huh? 2 years you've been thinking about leaving me. Okay. The show brought to you by the Jase case. We spend a lot of times talking baseball with each other. I get fired up, you get fired up. But I'm thankful for the connection we have. And today I want to chat a little bit more personal. Learn that you can get a 1-year supply on ED medications. You realize that what it means, bring on extended travel, natural disasters, chain supply issues, all that. You may not get a chance to get what you really need in any kind of medical field. So go on right now, the JaceMedical.com website, Jase Medical, JASE Medical.com website. Receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember, use the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. You're going to get a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Chase. So I'm thankful for the service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut my pills in half, and I ordered most of my daily meds with a year supply. I also ordered the antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than the local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for anyone. Got a few messages like that. So if you are someone you'd love, would like to get a little peace of mind by having a year supply of any daily med, go to JaceMedical.com to see what's offered for you. Remember, use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, you see at the bottom of the screen, that little crawl there at the bottom, that's going to tell you everything you need to know. The Jase case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. But you never know what's going to happen in our world where, hey, we're always in today's world when you don't know if stores are open, restaurants are open, what's going to happen. It's bizarre out there, as you know. So, hey, be prepared. Go to jasemedical.com. Get your 12-month supply and your daily medications today. And again, go to Jase Medical, Jase medical.com. Use the promo code LOCKDOWN for $20 off your purchase. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Coming right back. Hey, everybody, all you everydayers out there, welcome to Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Hey, we're here. I ain't going to the Cubs. You ain't going to the Cubs. I mean, anybody who lives here and moves to Chicago and becomes a Cub fan, well, you weren't a Brewer fan to begin anyway. I know some people like that. I don't have those people in my lives anymore because you can't trust them. Flipping fandom. How do you flip fandom? You grew up in Wisconsin. How do you flip fandom? But Craig today has no problem with it. Craig has no problem with it. Underestimated. He underestimated. He's not in trouble. I don't mean to come here and bash Craig. This doesn't mean like sour grapes or anything like this. But how do you underestimate that if you're going to go to the Cubs, the fans are not going to get a little riled up over that? Or the media? How does that surprise you? I mean, shouldn't that be part of human nature? That you would understand? He said he's been thinking about this for 2 years. 2 years. 2 years he's been thinking about this, needing a new challenge. And that's, again, now we're going to get down to the professional part of this. And this is what I get. The fact that he says he underestimates how people feel, putting on that jersey. Oh, it feels good. Okay, to me, that's uncalled for and a little much. But for a guy who can't even wear the jersey in the Brewer dugout, he's got the hoodie on. I mean, I think that's the first time I've seen Craig wear a jersey where he doesn't have the hoodie going. I mean, you had the jersey on. It was weird seeing Craig in a jersey because you're used to seeing him with a hoodie on, which is fine. I don't think a hoodie should be worn in baseball to begin with. I don't like the Red Sox started that back in 2004 or whenever it was. So yeah, he said and if you need a professional challenge, that's fine. I'm good with that, and I get it. But this is where he was asked if the Brewers could have countered, and he said, he kind of dilly-dallied, and I don't really. And no, what's he going to say there? And in defense of Craig, what's he going to say? Well, no, let's face it. The Milwaukee Brewers cannot compete with the Chicago Cubs. Okay, they just cannot compete. He's not going to say that. And he's not going to do that. Well, why wouldn't I come to the Cubs? You know what? Can the Brewers make a play for Shohei? No. Can the Brewers even spend any money on significant free agents? No. Okay. None of that. I mean, we're just trying to keep the stadium going here and keep it a team. Okay. With all that said, we still seem to win division titles as of late and go to the postseason, more so than the Cubs. And I don't want to hear you Cub fans talking about that World Series title. I get sick and tired of every time I hear a Cub fan try to rub that in my face on Twitter and all that. I'm getting tired of it. Yeah, you won one World Series in 158 years or whatever it is. Okay, I don't want to hear that either. But he's been thinking about this at Counsell for 2 years, he says, and I get that because sometimes professionally, I mean, I was working at a radio station one time, and I was like, God, is this where I want to work the rest of my career, or do I want a bigger bite of the apple? I think professionally, we think that all the time. I think professionally, anybody worth their salt thinks, okay, is this where I'm going to be for the next foreseeable future, or do I want a bigger piece of the pie? You naturally think that, okay? Yeah, you could settle in and enjoy a job, but you're always thinking about is there something, a bigger island to swim to? Is there? I get it. It happens. You work at a franchise. The Milwaukee Brewers are like working, like if you're working in a small town radio station in the middle of nowhere. Okay, no big cities, in the middle of nowhere, but you have a chance to go to the big city. Some guys take a bite of that apple and get that opportunity, and why not? Many guys do, and it's the same thing here. He's working in a Milwaukee Brewers. Well, Milwaukee working in for the Milwaukee Brewers is like working in radio in Shell Lake, Wisconsin, which is north of Eau Claire. Okay. But if you have a chance to go down to Madison or Milwaukee, you're fool not to be thinking about it. Same thing here. He's got a chance to go to the Chicago Cubs. And as bad as their history is, yes, they've had failures in the past. But let's face it. Let's give the devil his due. The Chicago Cubs are a storied franchise. Wrigley Field. Babe Ruth played at Wrigley Field. Okay? I mean, that's a legendary place. I'm not naive not to think that. Yeah, from 1945 to 1984, the Cubs did not go to the postseason. You thought our playoff drought was bad. The Cubs went from 1945 to 1984 without going to the postseason, and they had Ernie Banks, Billy Williams, and guys like that. Now they've gone to the postseason more than the Brewers have in the last 30 years. Yeah, they have, and they won their World Series title. So, but yeah, the resources are there for the Chicago Cubs. He said, I walked into this building. Yeah, I walked in this building. I saw smiles and all that. Yes. It's like the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers could go 0-16. Okay. Could go 0-16, but there'd be people tripping over themselves to get that Green Bay Packer job because that's a storied franchise. The New York Yankees could win 40 games. People would be tripping over themselves to get the Yankees job. LA Dodgers, Chicago Cubs. Okay. But the Milwaukee Brewers, Don Mattingly sounded like he wanted to stay in Toronto if they did a few things so he could continue to be the bench coach. Over becoming the manager of the Brewers, a team that has recent postseason success. But I bet you if the Cubs came calling for Don Mattingly, he'd forget everything. He'd forget where Toronto was. It was interesting. He said that Craig also said he had a conversation with David Ross before the news even broken. And Ross is taking the high road on this. He is, because let's face it, David Ross wants to manage again. He's not going to say disparaging things about the Cubs. And this being a professional. Sometimes it doesn't always work that way where you want to say good things and you're going to have to say bad things, but David Ross wants to manage again. And he got that opportunity with the Cubs and he wants to manage. So he's taking the high road for now. Privately, what he says to his buddies, that could be something different. But for now, he's taking the high road and him and Counsell had a good conversation. That had been an awkward conversation, wouldn't it? David Ross calls you up, texts you, and you call him back, which Counsell did. Yeah, sorry, dude, for taking your job. I know I know this job you were on a contract anyway, but I'm sorry. That just had to be an awkward, not that it happens. And Counsell says that's the cutthroat way of professional sports. And that's the way it is. It is. Hey, the Brewers made a big business decision with Corbin Burns. Didn't pay him $700,000 last year when they easily could have given in and not gone to arbitration. It's a business. I get it. And I know some of you don't want to hear that business term, and I totally get that. But yeah, he's in a place where he's got a better chance. And he said, ultimately, you're judged on winning World Series. That is true. We'll get to that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Welcome back to Locked On Brewers. Chuck Freeman, your host. Thank you, everybody, following us along here on Locked On Brewers, Google, Spotify, Apple. We're on all the major podcast downloads. And, of course, on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Brewers. Hit the subscribe button, please. And that little bell there to alert you every time we drop an episode. And, of course, follow me on Twitter. Always love hearing what you guys say. You guys are going crazy today on this. And I get it. I get it. Throwing away your Counsell jerseys, ripping up autographed pictures of Counsell. I've seen that done. Okay. Just don't do anything like, some fool did and tarnished Counsell Field in Whitefish Bay. Destruction and stuff like that. That's uncalled for. That's not fandom. But if you want to throw away your Counsell jersey, that's that's up to you. I haven't seen any Counsell 30 Cubs jerseys yet, but I'm sure we will when they come into AmFam Field coming up in May. So you guys are just going at it on Twitter today. Yeah, he was asked, could the Brewers have done anything differently? I don't know what the Brewers what could the Brewers, if the Brewers had offered him $8 million, he's probably leaving anyway. Again, it's just not about, it's about the money. See, Counsell, I bet you Counsell would have went to the Cubs even for $5 million because I think he wanted a bigger opportunity because he wanted to go to the Cubs. He wanted to go to a bigger market. The Cubs could have lowball. Cubs says, hey, we'll give you $5 million. Counsell, I bet you still takes that job. I bet you if it came down to Counsell, Attanasio giving Counsell $5 million and the Cubs getting $5 million to give it $5 million to Counsell, he still takes the Cubs job. He got $3 million more. It didn't take $8 million. The Cubs were bidding against nobody. As soon as Jed Hoyer called, hey, it was Counsell. He said today, Counsell says he's the one who said, hey, Jed, let's get together. So the Cubs weren't bidding against anybody. They were bidding against the Mets, nobody. And from reports, the Mets weren't going to match that $8 million anyway. So the Cubs overpaid for Counsell. Yeah. If Attanasio offers $5 and Jed Hoyer says, well, the Ricketts family, well, we'll give you $5.5 million. Counsell's taking it. Because it's, again, Brewers and Cubs, salary might be the same, but what you could do in Chicago, you'd be a fool, absolute fool, not to take the Cubs job. I get it. Totally get it. I saw the Brewers put out a tweet today, a little thing they put together. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Craig. I mean, it was classy for the Brewers to do that. It was. I don't feel the same way. I didn't like it or anything like that. But he said the industry is defined by winning World Series. It certainly is, by the fans. If baseball is defined by winning a World Series, the Brewers, it just backs up my statement that Counsell thinks that the Milwaukee Brewers are one of the most pathetic franchises ever because we've been to one World Series in 55 years and couldn't win that in 1982 when some of us were still in high school. Some of us were still in high school. Just was odd seeing. And then Counsell at the press conference today, Counsell, you saw him up in front, and then they broke off into groups. The Cubs media had a little gathering with Craig to ask them their questions, and then the Brewers media had a little gathering with Craig. So this is all, our fellow media people, the Stephanie Suttons and the guys from the Journal Sentinel and Spencer Williams and all that. We all, they all got around Counsell. And here he is right in front of him with a Cubs jersey. I would have liked this. Craig, get that thing off. Come on. What are you doing? I mean, just flaunting it and wearing the Cubs jersey right in front of us. All the Milwaukee media. He's a Cub now. He said he admitted he didn't know much about what's going on with the Cubs franchise. He admitted he's been moving slowly. He's been dragging his feet. He says, I got to pick up the pace. But I think he knows that they have one of the best they have one of the best farm systems in baseball. But when I was watching it on TV today, it flashed right in my face. They put a little thing on the screen while he was talking, flashed. Bottom 6 in payrolls in Major League Baseball. They were 26th in Major League Baseball in 2018. Yeah, just kind of tells us something that we already know, but that he's leaving us because he did the most with very little. And it's always going to be that way. We're always going to be that way because that's the way Major League Baseball is. The only sport like that, and it sucks. It absolutely does. Counsell wearing the Cubs jersey today, right in front of the local media. And say, let me slip this off. He just was right there, right in front of everybody. That irked me a little bit as well. But what are you going to do? So he's looking for a new challenge. He said that he didn't know much about with the Brewers, but when the Cubs came calling, he sure was hooked right away. I'm in, he says. He didn't say that literally, but figuratively. He was in. He was going to be turning the chapter, and he's a Cub now. He is a Chicago Cub now. All right, now it's time for us to move on. That press conference that you saw today, hopefully next week or two, and I think, as I mentioned on an earlier podcast, I think it's going to be Pat Murphy, who's going to be the next manager of the Brewers. That's my gut feeling. No substance behind that ever, but my gut feeling tells me with Antanasio saying that the coaching staff is intact for 2024. Murphy, you narrow your field. Who else are you going to get? Think out of the box. Could Murphy be the manager and Ricky Weeks the bench coach and Ricky the manager in waiting? Kind of to learn the ropes a little bit. I don't think Ricky's going to get the job, but could Ricky be a bench coach and maybe learn the tools of the trade of becoming a baseball manager? Could be. Could be. I mean, Murphy is 65. I don't know how much long he'd want to manage. I mean, 65, again, age doesn't matter. But for him, who knows? But yeah, I was thinking maybe Murphy and then Ricky Weeks as the manager in waiting down the line. You know, they groom him to be a manager, you know, sitting at Murphy's side there, and he could learn what it's like being a baseball manager. I'd be okay. I don't know. Ricky becoming a manager, I don't know. I never knew he had visions of becoming a Major League Baseball manager. Can he be a good manager or not? I don't know, but maybe that's the plan. Maybe that's the plan. All right, that's going to do it for the show today. Yep, Craig Counsell's a Chicago Cubs, and we got to move on. Thank you, everybody, for downloading all our podcasts on Google, Spotify, Apple, on YouTube. Again, please go to YouTube, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe there, and follow me on Twitter, Chuck Freimund, Freimund, for all things Wisconsin sports, with an emphasis on the Milwaukee Brewers. Thanks for joining me. Chuck Freimund, Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day.